YouTuber, The Amazing Lucas, seems to be going crazy as he loses about a quarter of his subscribers by the thousands almost every week, it seems. And in his frustration and confusion as to why are all these people leaving me, he seems to be taking it out on more successful YouTubers. More specifically, he seems to have declared war on Officer Brandon Tatum. So not too long ago, about 13 months ago, The Amazing Lucas was perhaps the most successful black YouTuber on the channel, on the platform, with well over 500,000 subscribers and chasing his way to 1 million at that rate of growth. But during that same time, I don't know, something about 2020, he must have broke psychologically. One of the many millions of people around the world suffering from psychological trauma due to the pandemic and the restrictions. He just started going, as he would say, ignorant or cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs when it comes to a lot of topics, and turning a lot of people off, including many people would say it was sarcasm, but he just went way off the mark in terms of a video where he was defending the killer of David Dorn. Again, they'll claim it was sarcasm. You don't go almost 7 minutes with no point and end in sight to said point to piss off individuals literally days after the death of this innocent retired cop. Just totally hitting the mark, losing subscribers. He lost well over, you saw in the previous clip or just a few seconds ago, he's down to 401 subscribers. And mind you, he was at 404,000 subscribers earlier on Friday, just 12 hours ago. He is constantly losing subscribers by the thousands. Meanwhile, other YouTubers of color like ABL and Officer Brandon Tatum have just surpassed him in subscribers, growth, relevancy in the political and or social commentary spectrum. And it seems as though he can't handle his downfall. Meanwhile, these guys are just blowing right past him and continue to influencing millions of more individuals on a daily and or weekly basis. And that has turned into hate, because it's one thing to have a change of position and meanwhile be respectful of others in other lanes and or having a respectful disagreement. But it seems as though he's gotten personal, specifically with Brandon Tatum, for whatever reason. And he's, as a result of that losing battle, he's losing followers, he's losing subscribers. It's one thing to have, again, a position and change on said position over time as you grow, you learn, have a different point of view. And I think a lot of people can actually respect that. I don't think his losses are mostly coming from him going down the crazy lane on certain topics and or just missing the mark in certain areas and or certain levels of conversation. It has more to do, I think, with his personal attack on Brandon Tatum as to why he's losing his subscribers. They see it as petty. It's just hating on someone else's success. I wouldn't be much surprised if in the coming months, not only will he dip below 400,000 subscribers, but then he'll start coming after other fellow YouTubers of color, such as Eric July, aka Young Ripper, Gothix, and Jericho Green, all of which who have been gaining massive amounts of ground in the YouTube channel sphere over the past several months. And Young Ripper, aka Eric July, is actually very close to surpassing Amazing Lucas. Better watch out, because it seems like The Amazing Lucas cannot handle the competition, and there are other black YouTubers or influencers that have a greater level of a platform and or audience than he does. He will come after your neck, so protect your neck, as Wu-Tang would say. I did watch his live stream, for instance, yesterday or last night to see more of what he has to say, because why is he allowing Brandon Tatum to live rent-free in his head? B. Tatum never did anything to him, and I'm not a B. Tatum stan, by the way. I respect him, mad respect and love for what he does, but I'm not a stan. But it's just clear that you are being petty right now, and this is an unnecessary battle. We don't really need that. We need to start really coming together more so as individuals, understanding each other's position. And there may be areas where you disagree, but you don't have to come at people's neck and be completely disrespectful and even bring their family into it, which Amazing Lucas has done, coming after his kids and his wife, and specifically calling him out on the race of said individuals as if it's relevant in any other way other than to try to point out that he's another black man who married a white woman. So clearly coming after his family unnecessarily has nothing to do with anything. But in watching his program last night, or his live stream, to try to explain away why individuals are leaving, instead of taking accountability for his flippant positions and or his petty attacks that seem to be just seriously hating on B. Tatum, instead of taking accountability for his failing and what he's doing wrong and why he's losing audiences, he tries to turn it around and say, you know what, before I was just feeding y'all baby food, sauce, but now I'm feeding people steak and a lot of these people can't handle it. No, you're just still ignorant and petty, hateful, and don't understand your audience and or a lot of the subscribers. Has nothing to do with you going to this new level. You haven't gone to a new level. A great editor, the video quality is amazing, as are the thumbnails, but you're just losing it in terms of what it is you're talking about, how it is you're going about certain topics, like the David Dorn, which I'll give it that if it was sarcasm, that you did nearly a 7-minute video talking about how the killer, what was his name, something Shannon, who killed David Dorn over a stolen television set that the man was stealing, that David Dorn was protecting said store from, tried to say, oh, he feared for his life. If it was sarcasm, it really missed the mark. You need to stop. That was incredibly distasteful, bad, things like that. And then again, going after Officer Tatum for no reason. That's why your videos are being ratioed. Why when you do videos attacking someone like Officer Brandon Tatum, you get ratioed to hell. And for those who don't know the term ratio, that means you get multiple times more dislikes than you do likes. So for instance, when he did go after Officer Tatum the first time in one of his videos, he got nearly 10,000 dislikes and just under 2,000 likes. He did a video on David Dorn, definitely a 5 times ratio, where he got maybe about 1,000 likes for said video, where he was disagreeing with David Dorn and or defending the killer. 10,000, nearly 11,000 dislikes, 1,000 likes. He is getting ratioed to no avail, and it's all on his failures and or what he's doing wrong in terms of the content and what he's talking about and or the delivery, but he doesn't know how to take ownership. And I'll be honest, I lost a lot of respect for him, because then I realized he can dish out a lot of criticism and talk a lot of smack about individuals, but can't take it back. Or at the very least, he very much so picks and chooses his battles. For instance, a couple of months ago, back in February, he did this whole 10-minute rant video, or about 10.5 minutes, criticizing Brandon Tatum's comments about Jesus and the divinity and Trinity. Had no problem talking about how he's a dum-dum for this position, all the while not providing, as his own motto would say, facts and evidence to back up his position. He just rails on Tatum's position on the Trinity. And then, okay, I'm like, all right, it's respectful that people have a difference of opinion, especially on said topic, especially when it comes to religion and politics. Those are the two trigger things that a lot of people in normal day conversation or normal life don't like to have conversations on, because they're the most triggered conversation. There's a reason why most people stay away from it, but Lucas had no problem talking about it and criticizing someone else's position. So literally just a few days later, he has one of his disagreement days, in which case he takes calls on anyone who disagrees with anything he may have said within the past couple of days or weeks, what have you. I don't think there's a time limit, but either way, I was within a 3 or 4 day period of when he did that video. So it wasn't like it was ancient news. It was literally just a couple of days prior. And a couple of people in his chat and comment section on his video last night said, oh, big talk when you do it when you can talk in the comment section on the internet, but call him on one of his disagreement days. I did that. And he shut down the conversation as quickly as possible. I was as cordial as I could be in the introduction, because I really did like his content at the time. I was still a subscriber. I respected him. I just wanted to have an honest conversation, because theology, I'm very big on. I love it. I've studied it for over 13, 14 years intently. I've taken theology college courses. I love the topic. I was ready to debate him. And the second I brought it up, he cut it off like this.
The thumbnail of the video was Trump on like a tank, and then regards to Trump 2024. Are you serious? 215, you're on the line. What's the disagreement?
Yo.
What's up? What's the disagreement?
My disagreement is, and I gotta say, love your content, by the way. Keep it up, all the great work. I guess my disagreement was the comment made a few days ago on Brandon Tatum's belief that Jesus isn't God.
Yeah, I'm not. You can go to another channel. I'm not discussing that.
No.
Nope.
See?
So I appreciate the call. I'm not discussing that. Like I said, there's two things I'm not going to discuss. When it comes to religion or anything like that, listen. Already been through that. You disagree? Go ahead. Disagree. I don't care. I really don't. Because as I've said before, some of y'all, I want to go to hell. For those of you who don't believe hell, fine. Don't worry about it. For those of you who do, listen. I really don't care. There's some people, yeah.
My thing is, don't bring up religion if you aren't willing to talk and debate about it. Don't criticize someone else and not be willing to take criticism directly back. It just proves to me that he picks and chooses his battles. In fact, even last night in his live stream, he was already talking himself out of a debate with Brandon Tatum, saying, oh, no. You know, I'm not even going to give this mofo any of my time. You got to pay me to debate him. No, you don't want to take another L because you've been taking nothing but L since you started this unnecessary beef with Officer Tatum. But I digress. He, again, did a whole 10-minute video talking about Jesus and the Trinity and criticizing someone else for their religious position. It's okay. It's easy to do that when you get no pushback, when it's just a one-way conversation, you in the video, and the only time you get pushback maybe is in the comment section when you can brush it off and don't have to worry about defending your position. I say he's a crappy debater because he's not ready to debate on the spot unless if it's a topic he is familiar with and or not, as he would say, ignorant on and ready to have a comeback. Or if he feels as though he's talking to an individual to which he knows he can beat. That's the only time it seems like he's willing to debate. Again, all I did was bring it up, and it's like he knew he was not ready to have a conversation because he knew his position, which is okay to have a position based upon your upbringing, that you are a certain way, you believe a certain way, largely because this is what you grew up believing. That's what almost everyone does. Whatever your culture or society and or parents are, you're likely to come up in the same beliefs, traditions, and ways, and it's okay. My criticism is when you start going out of your way to criticize someone else, you need to be open to have dialogue and honest dialogue with another individual. But that just, again, that's when I really started. I was like, really, you can't even have a conversation about a topic that you just went 10 minutes long on days prior. No. In his initial recent video against Officer Tatum, a reaction to a video Brandon Tatum did several days ago to a week ago, Brandon Tatum was, for instance, describing his experience as a college student at the University of Arizona and how it really changed his perspective on the world and on particularly Caucasians or white people here in the United States, especially how contrary it was to his, what he was always told growing up, which is a legitimate comment. Because I can say growing up, my grandparents were born, my maternal grandparents were born in the South, North Carolina. Actually, no, I believe my grandmother was actually born in Georgia, moved up to North Carolina at some point in the 50s, late 40s, early 50s. Met my grandfather there in Greensboro, North Carolina, where she was staying at the time. They didn't move up to Philly until the early 1960s. But needless to say, growing up during that time, in that era, they had a very bad experience when it came to racism and white people in this country back then. And that stayed with them for a very long time, to be honest, and they had no problem talking about their negative experiences growing up. And same with my mother, who is a 50s baby and was also, while living in Philadelphia at that time, growing up. Yeah, she's growing up in the North, quote unquote North, but she was also one of the first individuals in the city of Philadelphia to be participating in what was the desegregation of the Philadelphia public schools, because yes, they were very much segregated, and they had to bus her from her neighborhood to the white neighborhood in schools. So part of that program, and it was not a fun experience for my mom either. She faced a lot of backlash as one of the few black kids being bused into these all white schools in the northeast section of Philly. And so, yeah, she had also a lot of black people of the greatest generation and or the boomer generation had negative experiences, had no problem talking about it. And it doesn't mean that they can't make friendly with almost anyone, but it will raise a level of, I guess you can say, suspicion to some degree. And Officer Tatum was probably the recipient of that growing up in Fort Worth, Texas, heard a lot of things from his grandparents and his parents, and that may have formed his experience until he went to college there in Tucson, Arizona, where he went from a town that was 25% black to now 5%, and he had a total revelation in how black and whites can interact. He said, you know what, I was treated very great as a black athlete. And the amazing Lucas was highly critical and condescending about his remark. It was an honest profession of how surprisingly privileged he was despite being black. And Lucas is making it seem as though, dude, they're only doing it because you're fitting the stereotype of a black athlete. Of course they're going to treat you like royalty, as if that's the norm. And that reveals the amazing Lucas's great ignorance, as if there's not a long-standing history in this country that is even a little bit recent in many areas of this country where black athletes have been treated like crap. Case in point, this article from La Jolla talking about black student athletes at Georgetown University discussing their experiences of racism just last year. What was this, July of 2020? This was not just a protest of the George Floyd situation, but black athletes documenting and or talking critical of their experiences of racism at their own university. Yes, they're using the George Floyd slogans of "I can't breathe" to describe when their coach would refer to the black student athletes on the specific team as the sisters, or how being a black female student athlete at a predominantly white institution means not only that I have to have my worth on the court, but I have to also prove my worth in the classroom, and I have to prove it as a person walking on the campus. A lot of these individuals, they were, let's see here, I believe that the BCSA video has been a wake-up call, not only for the overall Georgetown community, but specifically the athletic department on pitfalls that have negatively affected black student athletes for years. Great ignorance to think that black student athletes don't get treated like crap in their own schools and or institutions. Just talked to, for instance, also, was it Randy Moss, grew up in West Virginia. As great of an athlete as you can get, and yet he will go at length with how badly he was treated growing up there in West Virginia, even as a student athlete. At another point in the video, Officer Tatum was talking about his, again, going into his experience at the University of Arizona, how he took some Afrocentric courses, and he was so excited to learn more about the history of blacks and or Africans at large, and how much more he learned about his people or those of his ethnicity and their background. And Lucas, again, instead of being congratulatory about learning so much more about his history and or his ancestry and or those who look like him, he took that as another dig to say, what school did you go to? Lucas is incredibly ignorant on the state of the American public educational system and its failings thereof. To make such comment. Again, that just exposes his ignorance, not Tatum's, because it's been well documented about the failures of the American educational system. Just in large, you can talk about any subject. I don't think there's a subject, whether it be math, reading, English, science, or history, where any state is above 39% proficiency at the 8th grade level, let alone the 11th grade. People, kids are doing great in elementary school, but the second you get them to middle school and high school, starts to dip down. But I digress. But you just need to watch Campus Reform or even a Jesse Waters interview on the streets and try to ask people questions about the 4th of July, the Declaration of Independence, and how many people go crickets, like, huh, what? And that's just general history. But then when you speak about African American history, it's been well documented that with whatever is being pushed or has been pushed historically in schools, I can't speak for the last decade, but I can definitely speak, all the way in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, maybe even the first decade of 2K. And my mom can attest how when she was growing up, again, back in when racism was more prevalent and blatant, even in Philly, She had teachers literally calling her or referring to her people as monkeys, but I digress. It's been well documented how undereducated black students have been about the history of their race. And again, and just goes to the amazing ignorance of the amazing Lucas and the actual experience in the public educational system. I can talk about what may have been his privileged California lifestyle and or educational upbringing in whatever school he went to. But for the majority of individuals, again, it's been well documented about the underscoring. I think about a lot of socially conscious rappers, for instance. Screw that mainstream hip hop crap. I really encourage a lot of my watchers and their viewers to listen to independent hip hop. There's a lot of information, culture, and education found in them. Most specifically, the following artists like Dead Press, they did a song on their very first debut album called They School, where one of the group members, Stickman, made the reference, and the song They School was a criticism of the American publicational system and how it's failing individuals, and how from his perspective, all he saw or all he received from the educational system, and also talking to a lot of peers and friends, is that they only glorified the Europeans and claiming that Africans were 3/5 of human beings. His exact lines on the first verse. And that was one of the major criticism. Immortal Technique, one of the smartest artists and revolutionary commentators and figures and activists that I know. You should definitely check him out. He did a song, I believe it was called Caught in the Hustle. He's done a lot of songs criticizing what is taught in society, but I believe it was in Caught in the Hustle from his album Revolutionary Volume 1 or Volume 2, in which he talks about how society and the schools only try to teach as it pertains to Africans as if their history started 500 years ago with slavery. And then the legendary MC of them all, the teacher himself, Knowledge Reigns Supreme, KRS-One, did a song in 89, 1990, something like that, called You Must Learn. Again, a criticism of what was prevalent in the educational system and that black people were not taught their history. In fact, let me show you. He goes on to say in his song, I believe this was the second verse, "It seems to me that a school that's ebony, African history should be pumped up steadily, but it's not. And this has got to stop. See spot, run, get spot. Insulting to a black man's mentality, a black way of life, or a jet black family. So include with one concern that you must learn. Filled with straight up facts, no mystery. Teach the student what needs to be taught, because black and white kids both take shorts when one doesn't know about the other one's culture." He's admitting there that they're not adequately teaching people about black history. Not at all. He says, "Ignorance swoops down like a vulture because you don't know that you were just a janitor. No one told you about Benjamin Banneker." Again, admitting that you would say, "Oh, what school did you go to?" If this was Officer Tatum, KRS-One was admitting even back then that most black people didn't think that they could grow to be much more than a janitor or a construction worker or working in a factory. They weren't told about a lot of the great accomplishments of individuals like Benjamin Banneker, which is why he's bringing up these names. A brilliant black man that invented the almanac. You can't you see where KRS is coming at with Eli Whitney, Haile Selassie, Granville Woods made the walkie-talkie. Lewis Latimer improved on Edison. Charles Drew did a lot for medicine. Garrett Morgan made the traffic lights. Harriet Tubman freed the slaves at night. Madam C.J. Walker made the straightening comb. But you won't know this if you weren't shown. The point I'm getting at, it might be harsh because we're just walking around brainwashed. Again, going on to say, you may think, well, shouldn't these names be common? They weren't. Otherwise, KRS-One would not be spitting and listing all of these names and accomplished black individuals throughout history down. Because the truth for most people in this country, whether you're black or white, but also speaking in urban centers, especially because this relates to Brandon Tatum, they're not fully teaching history. It's been well documented and a well consensus that black accomplishment most accomplishments of individuals of African descent, whether you're talking about the accomplishments of Africans, especially as it pertains to algebra and the creation of algebraic equations, things like astronomy, medicine, electronics, indoor inventions like the walkie-talkie, are not being taught in school. It's just not, and it's been well documented. So your criticism of Brandon Tatum not knowing about a lot of this until he got to college and took these courses, again, reveals your ignorance of the reality that most people are living in across the world, or specifically across the country. We can definitely learn to grow with one another. We can also learn to disagree. People come from different backgrounds, have different lived experience, different beliefs, and it's okay to disagree. I think one of the biggest things we need to do is respect other people's opinions, learn from them. Now, if that opinion diametrically disagrees with you, you also have to be willing to have the conversation, because if you're not willing to have that conversation, or a respectful conversation, this country goes nowhere. We don't really get anywhere coming at each other. I really hope the Amazing Lucas can stop this buffoonery and attacks on other fellow Americans or individuals that did nothing to him, have never said anything about him or about anything else that would require him to necessarily comment on or come at to the degree he has. I don't know why he's allowing Brandon Tatum to live rent-free in his brain and coming at him when Brandon Tatum is doing his best to ignore him. If anything, there have been multiple videos up to now that Lucas has done coming at Officer Brandon Tatum, and he's ignored them up to this point, and he made his one response yesterday, and then Lucas had to respond to the response. It's just insane how obsessed Lucas is. Again, I can only attribute to jealousy and hating Brandon Tatum's success and her growth. Brandon Tatum, about this time last year, was actually admitted that he was behind Lucas in subscribers and looked up to him, liked his content, tried to, wanted to not exactly emulate, but just say, man, I can learn some stuff from this guy to help with my own success. And he has blown up and really grew. While, again, Lucas has shrunk and done nothing but shrink continuously. I just hope he stops with this, because I don't want to see people fight amongst each other when they don't have to, especially when Brandon Tatum is not the enemy. Lucas is not the enemy. The enemy are the oligarchs that are pushing this World Economic Forum agenda of the Great Reset, that you will own nothing and be happy. Things are being put into motion, and that's who we need to be focusing on, not each other. We just need to start to come together. But that's just my video. It's just amazing to see quite the fall for an individual who was once highly regarded by many and not taking many shots at other fellow YouTubers, all of a sudden decided to take shots at Officer Brandon Tatum. It's starting to get petty. It's ridiculous. That's my video. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Again, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. This is Bruce the Boss Brooks, and I'm out. Peace.